हेलो बच्चों। सीबीएसई क्लास 10th चैप्टर फर्स्ट पेज नंबर 23 विजुअलाइजिंग द नेशन. While it is easy enough to represent a ruler through a portrait or a statue, how does one go about giving a face to a nation? Artists in the 18th and 19th centuries found a way out by personifying a nation. In other words, they represented a country as if it were a person. Nations were then portrayed as female figures. The female form that was chosen to personify the nation did not stand for any particular woman in real life. Rather, it sought to give the abstract idea of the nation a concrete form. That is, the female figure became an allegory of the nation. What is allegory? When an abstract idea, for instance, greed, envy, freedom, liberty, is expressed through a person or a thing. An allegorical story has two meanings, one literal and one symbolic. You will recall that during the French Revolution, artists use the female allegory to portray ideas such as liberty, justice, and the republic. These ideals were represented through specific objects or symbols. As you would remember, the attributes of liberty are the red cap or the broken chain, while justice is generally a blindfolded woman carrying a pair of weighing scales. Similar female allegories were invented by artists in the 19th century to represent the nation. In France, she was christened Marianne, a popular Christian name which underlined the idea of a people's nation. Her characteristics were drawn from those of liberty and the republic, the red cap, the tricolor, the cockade. Statues of Marianne were erected in public squares to remind the public of the national symbol of unity and to persuade them to identify with it. Marian images were marked on coins and stamps. Similarly, Germania became the allegory of the German nation. In visual representations, Germania wears a crown of oak leaves as the German oak stands for heroism. There is two photograph. One is of postage stamp of 1850 with the figure of Marianne representing the Republic of France, and the second figure is of Germania, Philip White, 1848. The artist prepared this painting of Germania on a cotton banner as it was meant to hang from the ceiling of the Church of St. Paul, where the Frankfurt Parliament was convened in March 1848. Means they were idealizing or they are giving figure what they are thinking. Okay. Then there are some meaning of the symbols on the page number 24. Broken chains mean being freed. Last page it was mentioned in the last page. Breastplate with eagle, symbol of the German Empire's strength. Crown of oak leaves, heroism. Sword, readiness to fight. Olive branch around the sword, willingness to make peace. On the UN ka symbol also this olive branch is there. Black, red and gold tricolor, flag of liberal nationalists in 1848, banned by the dukes of the German states. Rays of the rising sun, beginning of new era. ठीक है. Then this are two other. Germania guarding the Rhine. In 1860, the artist Lorenz Clazen was commissioned to paint this image. The inscription of Germania swords reads German sword protects the German Rhine. Okay. Next, nationalism and imperialism. By the last quarter of the 19th century, nationalism no longer retained its idealistic liberal democratic sentiment of the first half of the century, but became a narrow creed with limited ends. Means what it was started with, it got fade down the motto. During this period, Nationalist groups became increasingly intolerant of each other and ever ready to go to war. The major European powers in turn manipulated the nationalist aspirations of the subject peoples in Europe to further their own imperialist aims. The most serious source of nationalist tension in Europe after 1871 was the area called the Balkans. The Balkans was a region of geographical and ethnic variation comprising modern day Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Greece, Macedonia, Croatia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Slovenia, Serbia, and Montenegro, whose inhabitants were broadly known as the Slavs. A large part of the Balkans was under the control of the Ottoman Empire. The spread of the ideas of romantic nationalism in the Balkans, together with the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire, made this region very explosive. All through the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire had sought to strengthen itself through modernization and internal reforms, but with very little success. One by one, its European subject nationalities broke away from its control and declared independence. The Balkan peoples based their claims for independence or political rights on nationality and used history to prove that they had once been independent but had subsequently been subjugated by foreign powers. Hence, the rebellious nationalities in the Balkans thought of their struggles as attempts to win back their long lost independence. As the different Slavic nationalities struggled to define their identity and independence, the Balkan area became an area of intense conflict. The Balkan states were fiercely jealous of each other and each hoped to gain more territory at the expense of the others. Matters were further complicated because the Balkans also became the scene of the big power rivalry. During this period, there was intense rivalry among the European powers over trade and colonies as well as naval and military might. These rivalries were very evident in the way of Balkan problem unfolded. Each power, Russia, Germany, England, Austro-Hungary, was keen on countering the hold of other powers over the Balkans and extending its own control over the area. This led to a series of wars in the region and finally the First World War. Nationalism aligned with imperialism led Europe to disaster in 1914. But meanwhile, many countries in the world which had been colonized by the European powers in the 19th century began to oppose imperial domination. The anti imperial movements that developed everywhere were nationalist in the sense that they all struggled to form independent nation states and were inspired by the sense of collective national unity, forced in confrontation with imperialism. European ideas of nationalism were nowhere replicated, for people everywhere developed their own specific variety of nationalism. But the idea that societies should be organized into nation states came to be accepted as natural and universal. So, here the first chapter finished. Now, there are some questions written on the back of the on the page number 28. Please do write. Again I will say, writing is the best thing, writing is the right thing right now. Okay. A map celebrating the British Empire. This chapter is little way ahead type thing. um, Whatever we read before, it's okay, but you guys can do easily. This chapter is a journey from where it started and how it went to the 1914 war, First World War. It is giving the pathway for that. Okay, what are Balkans, why it arose, what happened, kind of thing. Little brief knowledge is given in this chapter. Okay, thank you. See you in the next video with next chapter.